I could tell something was off the minute I saw her at the entrance of the steakhouse. She looked perfect, like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. Her dress was tight, that deep red I knew she loved. She smiled, the kind of smile that's meant to impress, and for a second, I almost believed it. She walked over to the table, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. I stood up to pull her chair out, but before I could, she was already sitting, the same calm poise she always carried with her. "You look great," I said, settling into my seat across from her. "Thanks," she replied, her voice smooth, but there was something underneath it, a bit too controlled. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Her posture was flawless, but her fingers were tapping on the edge of her glass, almost imperceptible, nervous energy, hidden under layers of confidence. It was the way she carried herself lately, like she was ready for something, but not sure how it would go. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching her pour herself a glass of wine, not looking up. "I'm fine," she said, her eyes meeting mine for the first time since she'd sat down. She offered a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about us." I raised an eyebrow, wondering if she'd say it, if tonight was the night she'd finally drop the bomb. "About," I asked, the tip of my tongue already tasting the tension in the air. "The marriage," she said, her voice unwavering. She took a sip of her wine, her gaze never leaving me. "It's not working anymore." I didn't flinch, didn't show any surprise, even though the pit in my stomach had grown a few sizes. "Yeah? Yeah." She set her glass down, her fingers sliding over the smooth rim. "I want a divorce." I blinked, my breath steady, like she'd just asked if I wanted dessert instead of tearing down everything we'd built. She hadn't even flinched either, just said it, like she was ordering a coffee. "All right," I said, meeting her gaze, not blinking. "Anything else?" She hesitated, but only for a second. Her mask of control barely cracked. I could see it in the way her hands tightened around the stem of her glass. But she said nothing else. This was it. The start of whatever the hell came next. She crossed her arms, watching me, like she was waiting for some emotional outburst. Some anger, maybe heartbreak. But I didn't give her that. I let the silence stretch between us while I processed what she'd just said. She wasn't angry, wasn't crying. It was almost like she had rehearsed this, as if there was no room for any other outcome. "I haven't been happy for a while now," she said, her voice steady. "The truth is, this marriage has been falling apart for months, and I think we both knew it." She wasn't looking for sympathy, and she sure as hell wasn't asking for it. The way she spoke, it was almost like she was diagnosing a problem. Detached, methodical, like there was no need for the messy emotions people always expect when a marriage ends. I stayed quiet, watching her. I didn't feel the anger or the ache I thought would come. It was just a dull acceptance, like I'd known this moment was coming, but I hadn't been ready for her to be so cold about it. She shifted in her seat, her gaze tightening, expecting some kind of response. But I wasn't giving it to her yet. I wasn't going to show any weakness, not now. "So, what's your answer?" she asked, her tone getting a little sharper, as if testing me. I didn't answer right away. I let the tension build. She was looking at me like she thought I'd shatter any minute. But I wasn't about to. Slowly I lifted my glass and took a sip of wine, keeping my eyes on her the entire time. When I set the glass back down, I gave her a smile. It wasn't anything warm, it was more like a recognition of what had been playing out between us for so long. "I've known for months," I said casually, my voice barely above a whisper. "About your affair, about him." Her face didn't register shock at first, but it did something worse. Her eyes narrowed like she was trying to figure out how the hell I knew. It didn't take long before that mask of confidence started to crack. What?" she stammered, blinking quickly. "How? Who told you?" I shrugged. "Does it matter?" Her lips tightened, her hands gripping the edge of the table like she was trying to hold herself together. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the way the table between us felt more like a distance now. She couldn't hide it anymore. The flicker of panic in her eyes. It was like she'd expected some dramatic meltdown from me, but instead I was just sitting there, unbothered. She hadn't even seen it coming. I could see it in the way she was shaking her head, as if trying to make sense of the moment. "No," she said, forcing a laugh, her voice shaky. "You're lying." Ask him yourself," I cut in, cutting through her frantic denial. Jason's probably waiting for you to come crawling back, isn't he? She froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I leaned forward, just enough to make sure she understood. You thought you had it all figured out. You thought I wouldn't find out. But I've been a step ahead this whole time. You weren't the only one planning. Her face reddened, her breath quickening. This wasn't the conversation she'd prepared for. I let the silence stretch, giving her a moment to process everything that was happening. I wasn't in a hurry. She was fidgeting now, glancing around the room, clearly trying to regain her composure. I could feel the weight of the moment sinking in, the shift in power. This was no longer about her control or her plans. It was about me. She shifted in her seat, clearing her throat, and finally spoke. You think you've won? You think this makes you better than me? I didn't respond immediately. I just watched her, letting her words hang in the air. She was trying to provoke something out of me, some anger maybe, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I wasn't about to play her game. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. No, I don't think I've won, I said, the calmness of my voice almost jarring in contrast to her rising frustration. The best part of dinner hasn't even happened yet. Her confusion was palpable. She frowned, looking at me like I'd just dropped a bomb without any explanation. What the hell are you talking about? She snapped. I didn't answer. I just motioned toward the door, where a man in a suit was walking toward us, his eyes locked on our table. She turned, following my gaze, and her eyes widened when she saw him. I watched her face shift from confusion to alarm in the span of a second. The man was tall, sharp, and professional looking. He didn't hesitate for a moment as he approached our table, walking with purpose. He stopped right next to me and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table toward my wife. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked down at the papers in front of her, and for a moment, she didn't speak. She just stared at the official-looking documents. It didn't take long before she picked them up, flipping through them, her eyes scanning the contents. "Divorce papers," she murmured, her voice tight with disbelief. You filed?" I nodded, not bothering to hide the faintest of smirks. "Already underway," I said quietly. "It's official." She looked up at the lawyer, then at me, then back to the papers, the realization dawning on her. Her expression twisted with frustration, but she didn't know where to direct it anymore. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out at first. She looked completely off balance. "What the hell is this?" she finally snapped, her voice rising, trying to grab some of the control back. "You can't do this. This is—" "Please don't make a scene," I interrupted, my voice still steady, completely unfazed. "I've already done everything I need to. You're not in charge here anymore." She blinked, taken aback by how calmly I was delivering the news. She wanted drama, but I wasn't going to give it to her. The shock on her face was the closest thing to a win I was going to get. The lawyer remained silent, standing behind her, waiting for her to absorb it all. "You didn't even tell me you were filing," she muttered, her voice cracking, as if that was the most hurtful thing I'd done in the entire situation. "Didn't think you'd care," I replied evenly. "I wasn't waiting for your approval." She stared at me, her eyes narrowing, searching for something, anything, to latch onto. But I wasn't giving her any openings. She was rattled, and I was letting her feel every second of it. The lawyer cleared his throat, and I glanced up at him. "Is there anything else, or—" I asked, making it clear that the conversation was winding down. The lawyer nodded. "All of this is already in motion. Your assets will be divided accordingly, and your lawyer will be in contact, unless there's something else you'd like to add." She didn't respond, her eyes still locked on the papers, her hands trembling slightly. The power had completely shifted, and there was nothing she could do about it. Her hands shook as she flipped through the papers, her eyes darting over each line, trying to make sense of it. Her face was pale, and she didn't seem to know where to look, at me, the lawyer, or the papers in front of her. "How is this even possible?" she demanded, her voice rising with panic. I didn't file. I was going to— This isn't—" "You didn't have to file," the lawyer said, cutting her off. His voice was calm, detached. "Your infidelity has already triggered the proceedings. The filing was automatic." I leaned back in my chair, watching her unravel, piece by piece. It was like watching a carefully constructed facade crumble in real time, and I couldn't look away. "Infidelity?" She looked at me, her eyes wide. She was barely holding it together now. That's not fair. You didn't even give me a chance to. You had your chance, I interrupted. My voice was steady, almost casual. I gave you a long time to figure things out. You chose not to. Her breath hitched, but she didn't stop. But this is all wrong. You can't just. I'm entitled to things. I deserve my share. The lawyer's expression didn't change. As per your prenup, all assets are forfeited due to your infidelity. There will be no financial support, no alimony, no claim on any of the property. Her mouth dropped open as the words sank in, and I could practically see the panic settle in her chest. She turned back to the papers again, flipping through them like she might have missed something, some loophole that would give her a way out. But there was nothing. The silence between us was heavy now, the reality of it all pressing down on her. You're taking everything? She whispered, her voice cracking. I'm not taking anything from you, I replied, calm as ever. You already gave it away, to him. She shot up from her seat, the chair scraping across the floor. This isn't happening, she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and desperation. This isn't how this is supposed to go. You're supposed to. Don't worry, I said, cutting her off again, watching her desperation rise. I'm sure Jason will help you out. You know, since he's probably got all that extra cash lying around, thanks to you. Her eyes flickered with panic. Don't bring him into this, she hissed. You don't know anything about him. I leaned forward, staring at her. You really think he's going to help you now, after everything that's come to light? That's rich. She faltered, as though she'd just realized that the man she'd thought would be her safety net wasn't going to be there when the rug was pulled out from under her. She looked at the lawyer, her face twisted with anger and fear, but he didn't react, just stood there, completely neutral. Where the hell is he? She asked, her voice frantic. He'll help me. I know he will. This is just a delay. You can't. The lawyer shook his head. I'm afraid that's not the case, ma'am. Jason has already been informed of the situation. Your assets are frozen, and his are as well. Neither of you will be receiving any financial support. For the first time, she was silent. Her chest was rising and falling quickly, and her face was a mix of rage and utter disbelief. It was like she couldn't quite wrap her head around what was happening. The pieces were falling into place now, and I could almost see the moment when she realized she had nothing left. Nothing to fall back on. Not even Jason. Wait, she said, the panic rising in her voice again. You can't just take everything from me. Her eyes locked on mine, desperate. We built this together. This isn't how it's supposed to be. I didn't say anything. I just let her keep going. Let her keep trying to make sense of it. This was her wake-up call, and it was hitting her harder than I'd expected. Every word she said, every attempt to regain some ground, was like a final, pitiful grasp for control that she no longer had. Look at me, she said, her voice shaking. This isn't fair. You can't do this to me. I watched her, really watched her, as she stood there, unraveling, and it felt good. Like I was finally watching the aftermath of everything she'd done to me. You don't get it, do you? I asked, leaning in a little. I've been planning this for months. Every move you made, I was one step ahead. You thought you were the only one who knew how to play this game, but you were wrong. Her eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught in her throat. She didn't have anything left to say, not anymore. She could feel it now, the realization that the control she'd been wielding over me was gone. She was on the edge. I could see it. And I let her hang there for a few moments before the lawyer spoke again. The lawyer placed another folder on the table. He opened it, revealing a series of photographs, grainy hotel snapshots, blurry but clear enough to show her. With him. Jason. In some, they were laughing. Others, their faces inches apart in a way that made it obvious what had been going on. I didn't need to see them. I'd seen them all already, but I watched her face as she flipped through them. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at the first one, then the second, and by the time she got to the third, her face had gone from pale to sickly. The color drained from her skin, leaving her looking like she might pass out. She couldn't look at the images for long. She kept flipping through, her hands shaking, her breath shallow. Each one was like a strike to her, hitting harder than the last. She swallowed, hard, as if trying to force the bile down. This isn't real, she muttered, her voice faint. Who gave you these? Who tipped you off? I didn't answer right away. I let her panic simmer. The desperation in her voice wasn't lost on me. She was unraveling, and I had no intention of rushing her. I could see it now. The perfect mask of confidence she'd been wearing for months was cracking in front of me. She wasn't the one in control anymore. I was. "Does it really matter?" I finally said, my tone flat, like I didn't even care how I'd found out. "I've been a few steps ahead this whole time. You didn't think I'd notice, did you?" She looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You knew? You knew all along?" The words came out like she couldn't even believe it herself. I nodded, my gaze steady. "Yeah, I knew. But I didn't need to confront you right away. I wanted to give you enough rope to hang yourself." Her hand shook as she tossed the last photo back onto the table, as if it might disappear if she didn't look at it. But it was too late. The truth was there, staring back at her. She opened her mouth to say something, but the words died in her throat. I didn't care to hear her excuses. The lawyer cleared his throat, cutting through the tension. "These photos, along with your hotel receipts, corroborate the infidelity claim. And, as mentioned earlier, the terms of the prenup have been activated. The financial consequences are final." She shook her head. No, this isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't fair." I watched her, a small smile tugging at the corner of my lips. She was trying to push the pieces back together, but they were already scattered. "You really thought you'd walk away from this with everything, didn't you?" She didn't answer, but I could see the wheels turning in her head, desperately trying to find a way out. But there was no way out. The walls were closing in. "Everything's been taken care of," I said, my voice low but final. "No alimony, no assets, you get nothing." She shook her head harder, her breath speeding up. I can't. This isn't how it's supposed to go. You deserve nothing," I interrupted. "You've made your choices, and now you're going to live with them." I looked at her, watching the panic flood her face as she realized there was no backpedaling anymore. "You think I'm just going to sit here and listen to you beg for more time, more chances? You're not getting anything. Not from me, not from anyone." She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'll fight this," she said, her voice cracking with a mix of anger and desperation. "I'll go to court. I'll make this a mess for you. You'll regret—" I stood, meeting her gaze. "You can try, but it won't change anything. You've lost." The silence stretched, and I could feel the weight of it hanging in the air. She stood there, her body rigid, her mouth opening and closing, as though she couldn't find the words to make it right. But there was nothing left to say. The lawyer handed her the final piece of paperwork, her financial statement. Her eyes scanned it, and then her whole body seemed to deflate. She collapsed back into her chair, her shoulders slumped. Her eyes never left the paper, but I could see it in the way her hands gripped the table, how tightly she held on, as if that might somehow stop the flood. She was finished. Her confidence was gone. The illusion was shattered. I watched her as she crumpled, not physically, but emotionally. There was no fight left in her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to satisfaction. The lawyer slid another document across the table, this time thicker, more formal. My wife's eyes darted down at it, and I could see her stomach drop before she even opened it. The prenuptial agreement, the one she thought she'd forgotten about, the one she never thought she'd have to face again. Her hands shook as she flipped it open, scanning the first few lines. She didn't say anything at first, but I could see the wheels turning, her mind working overtime to understand exactly what this meant. This isn't possible," she muttered, her voice low, almost a whisper. She looked at the lawyer, then back at me. "This doesn't count. You can't—" "The terms are clear," the lawyer said calmly. "Any infidelity on your part triggers the forfeiture of all shared assets. It's right here in the agreement, all of it. Property, investments, anything you might have thought you could claim is gone." Her eyes widened as she went back over the document, her face slowly draining of color. She looked at me, but her gaze was unfocused, like she was trying to make sense of a puzzle she didn't have the pieces for. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice rising. "I didn't agree to this. You set me up. This is all—" She slammed her hand on the table, the sudden noise making a few people at nearby tables glance over. "You can't just— This isn't legal." I took a slow sip of my wine, watching her, savoring the moment. She was coming undone right in front of me. The anger in her voice was thinly veiled panic. I wasn't surprised. She thought she had control, that her affair was something she could just sweep under the rug. But now, with the truth laid bare, she was spiraling. "It's perfectly legal," the lawyer replied, unfazed. "It's signed. You agreed to it. All of it. Your affair has consequences, and those consequences are being enforced." "Consequences?" Her voice cracked, desperate now. "You're telling me everything we built is gone? My life is over because of this?" She was near hysterical, but there was nothing left for her to say. The document was damning. The terms were clear, and no matter how much she tried to fight, she wasn't getting anything back. I leaned back in my chair, not even bothering to look at her. I wasn't interested in her anger or her excuses anymore. "You're right, your life's about to change, but you made this choice, not me. All I did was make sure the consequences were clear." Her jaw clenched. She was trying to hold it together, but I could see the cracks. Her hands were gripping the table so tightly her knuckles were white. She wanted to lash out, accuse me of being cruel, manipulative, but I didn't care. It wasn't about her anymore. She was a casualty of her own choices. You planned this, didn't you?" she finally said, her voice low, venomous. "You've been plotting this the whole time, waiting for me to mess up." I shook my head, smirking. "I didn't need to wait. You made sure the pieces fell into place on your own." Her eyes blazed with fury, but I could see it now. She wasn't in control anymore. She was flailing. Her eyes moved between the lawyer and me, as if searching for some way to turn this around, but the truth was already out. She opened her mouth to say something, probably to demand a fight in court. But I interrupted her, my voice steady. "You're not going to court," I said. "It's already over." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "What do you mean it's already over?" "The bank accounts," I said, taking another sip of wine. "I had them dissolved a few days ago, every last cent. There's nothing left for you to claim." Her face went slack. "What?" she breathed. You took everything?" I nodded. "Yes, every asset, every account. Everything you thought you could walk away with? It's already gone." She looked as if the air had been sucked out of her lungs. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted back and forth, like she was trying to process the words, but couldn't quite piece it all together. I watched her sink lower into her seat, unable to stop it. The weight of the reality hit her like a ton of bricks. "Jason," she whispered, almost pleading, "he'll help me. He'll fix this." I let out a short laugh, barely audible. "I think Jason's already taken care of himself, don't you?" I made sure of that. Her face twisted with a mixture of confusion and fear, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She didn't have anywhere left to turn. She was completely exposed, completely powerless. The woman who thought she could control everything, who thought she had all the answers, was now nothing more than a hollow shell, grasping at straws. "You're done," I said, my voice quiet, final. "You've lost everything." She stared at the table, her head hanging low. She couldn't look at me anymore, and I didn't care to look at her. The woman who'd stood across from me with such confidence earlier that night was gone. There was nothing left of her but the wreckage she'd created. The lawyer didn't hesitate to slide yet another folder onto the table. He opened it slowly, giving my wife time to digest what she'd already been hit with. She didn't take her eyes off him, her hands still trembling as they gripped the edge of the table. "This," he said, his voice unbothered by the storm brewing in front of him, "details the full extent of your financial situation moving forward." She barely glanced at the contents before looking up at him with narrowed eyes. "What the hell are you talking about?" The lawyer didn't flinch. "You're losing the house," he said calmly. "In addition to the bank accounts, all assets are being seized. As per the terms of your agreement, you've been cut off from all financial support, effective immediately." She leaned back in her chair, eyes wide, but it wasn't a look of disbelief anymore. It was pure anger, bubbling up fast. I could feel the heat radiating from her, but I didn't care. I couldn't help but smile, just a little. She hadn't seen this coming, none of it. "Cut off," she spat. "You can't do this. You can't just—" The lawyer continued, uninterested in her outrage. "As of now, there are no funds available to you. The house has been liquidated. All accounts have been closed. You are—" He looked down at the papers in front of him. "Financially independent, or rather, financially destitute." Her face twisted with fury. She shot up from her seat, but the lawyer remained calm, stone-faced. "This is illegal. You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted, my voice low and firm. I leaned forward, watching her, relishing the chaos in her eyes. "You've lost it all. You're not getting any of it back." She froze, the words dying on her lips, as if she couldn't quite process how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. Then, in a final desperate bid for control, she looked at the lawyer. "What about Jason?" she demanded. "Has he been notified about all of this?" I could feel the shift in her, the hope flickering in her eyes. Jason. Of course, she'd be thinking about him. He was her backup plan, the one she'd rely on to fix everything. She was scrambling, but she couldn't hide it anymore. Her last shot at regaining any sort of power was through him. The lawyer didn't even look at her as he answered. "Yes, he has been informed. He's aware of the situation." I leaned back in my chair, letting that hang in the air for a moment. My wife's eyes darted between the lawyer and me, her chest rising and falling faster now. "So, what?" Her voice was shaking. "What's he gonna do?" "Jason's assets have also been frozen," the lawyer said, his tone almost clinical. "Your affair partner is not exempt from the consequences of your actions. He is equally cut off and will not be supporting you in any way." Her face twisted in disbelief. "What?" she whispered. "Number?" "No, he wouldn't. He has to—" "Jason won't be helping you," I cut in, not even looking at her. "You're on your own now. No bank account, no support, no Jason, nothing." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and fury, but mostly fear. Her last thread of control, her last chance at redemption, had slipped right through her fingers. She'd thought Jason would be her way out, but now even he was gone. "Don't tell me this is how it ends," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "I didn't deserve this." "You absolutely did," I replied. I wasn't angry, wasn't even upset. I was just done. "You made your bed, now lie in it." She shook her head as if denying the truth, her hands pressed flat against the table, her knuckles white. "I didn't do anything wrong. This is all because of you. You've been planning this, setting me up for months, haven't you?" I gave her a dry smile. "You're right, I've been planning this, but you've been setting yourself up for much longer than that." I didn't have to lift a finger. The lawyer cleared his throat, handing her a final set of documents. "Everything has been arranged as per the legal terms. You're financially finished." She looked at the papers, her eyes wide but unfocused. She was in shock now, slowly sinking into the reality that everything she had believed in, everything she thought she was entitled to, was gone. The last vestiges of her confidence evaporated in front of me. She looked at me again, but there was no fire left in her eyes, just defeat, and it felt good. It was the final confirmation that she was no longer in control. "You've lost," I said quietly, "and it's all on you." Her head dropped to the table, the weight of it all crashing down on her. For a moment, I just sat there, watching her, waiting. The woman who had once thought she could walk away with everything was now reduced to this. It was more satisfying than I had ever expected. Just as the silence settled in, my phone buzzed on the table. My wife's head jerked up at the sound, her eyes widening when she saw the caller ID. Her face went white. "It's him," she whispered, panic flashing in her eyes. I didn't need to ask who him was. Jason, her affair partner, the one she thought would come to her rescue when everything went south. I glanced at her, then picked up the phone, answering it with an easy, almost nonchalant tone. "Hey, Jason." There was a slight pause before Jason's voice came through, sounding confused. Hey man, what's going on? Everything okay with you and—" I cut him off before he could finish. "Actually, no, everything's not okay with her. She's in financial ruin. The divorce is already happening. I've made sure of that." I watched my wife's face drain of color as the reality of what was happening hit her all over again. She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her a chance to speak. Jason, still sounding confused, responded. "Wait, what? Financial ruin? What the hell are you talking about? I thought you two were settling things." I couldn't help but enjoy the slight edge of panic in his voice. "I've already taken care of everything," I said, making it clear how far ahead of both of them I was. "No assets, no bank accounts, no money. She's got nothing. And by the way, her little escape plan with you, that's not going to work out either." I could hear the wheels turning on Jason's end as he processed what I was saying. The quiet pause stretched between us, and I saw my wife, her eyes darting back and forth, desperately trying to find something, anything to salvage from this. She leaned forward, opening her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Jason, I continued, you've been cut off too. No money for you either, so you can't save her. Her eyes widened as the realization dawned on her. She opened her mouth again, her desperation creeping into her voice. Jason, please, please, I need your help. I don't have anywhere to go. Please help me. I could hear the panic in her voice, but Jason's silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I kept my eyes locked on her, watching her spiral further into the chaos she'd created. She was begging now, but there was no way out. Jason didn't say anything at first. Then I heard the quiet click of the phone line as he finally spoke. I can't help you. I'm sorry. There was an edge of finality in his tone. No, Jason, don't. She started, but it was too late. The line went dead. Jason had hung up on her. Her hands trembled as she dropped her head into her hands, her sobs muffled as she tried to gather herself. But it was useless. She was alone, completely isolated. Her entire world was falling apart, and there was nothing left to hold it together. She looked up at me with wild eyes, but she didn't speak. There were no more excuses, no more justifications. The silence between us was thick with her defeat. I stood up slowly, taking my time, watching her struggle to pull herself back together. I didn't rush her. There was no need to. She'd lost everything. You've lost everything, I said, my voice low but sharp. And I won. She stared at me, her face pale, her shoulders shaking. Her lips parted, like she was going to say something, anything, to stop what was happening. But she couldn't find the words. She didn't have anything left to say. Goodbye, I said, turning on my heel and heading for the door. I didn't look back. As I walked away, I could still hear her, but it didn't matter anymore. It was over. I was free. I stepped out of the restaurant, letting the cool night air hit me, but before I even made it to the parking lot, I heard her heels clattering behind me. Wait! Her voice was shaky, desperate. Please, don't leave like this. I didn't stop. I kept walking, my hands shoved deep in my pockets, trying not to give her the satisfaction of slowing down. Please, just listen to me, she called again, her voice cracking. I know I messed up. I made a huge mistake. You have to believe me. I finally turned, stopping in my tracks. She was standing a few feet away, still in that dress, expensive, too tight, but now it looked out of place on her, like a costume. The desperation was all over her face. It wasn't the calm, confident woman I had sat across from just hours ago. That woman was gone. You really think I'm going to buy this? I asked, my voice sharp. That you're sorry? You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry because you're losing everything. Her face flushed, her breath quickened, and I could see it in her eyes. The panic, the fear. The control was gone, and now all she had left was a desperate plea for another chance. Please, she whispered, voice barely audible. I don't want to lose you. I took a slow breath, keeping my eyes on hers. If I hadn't filed for divorce first, would you even be standing here right now? She faltered, the words caught in her throat. Her lips moved, but she couldn't answer. I could see it. She wouldn't have cared if I'd stayed in the dark. If I hadn't taken action, she would have kept on with the affair, with her lies, with the life she'd been building behind my back. No, she finally admitted, barely a whisper. No, I wouldn't be. I nodded, the truth of it settling into the space between us. I'd known it all along, but hearing it from her made it final. She wasn't sorry for her betrayal. She was sorry she'd been caught. That's all I need to hear, I said, my voice cold, firm. There's no going back. Not for you, not for me. Everything we had, it's done. Her shoulders drooped, her head sinking as the weight of the words hit her. There was nothing left for either of us to salvage. I'd made my decision, and nothing she said could undo it. I took one last look at her, standing there in the middle of the street, lost in her own mess. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction, not in the way I thought I would. I just felt free, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Without saying another word, I turned and walked away. As I stepped into my car, The finality of the moment settled over me. I didn't need to look back. I was done. I had taken back everything she'd stolen from me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again.